Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and welcome to the second edition of the 2020 TimeformUS Road to the Derby series. The prep that we're going to take a look at this week is the first step on the Arkansas route to the Kentucky Derby. That's the Smarty Jones Stakes, offering 10-point qualifying points towards the winner of this race, going 1 mile at Oaklawn. Let's start by taking a look at the field for this race. It's a pretty competitive group, and Steve Asmussen obviously has a very strong hand in here. He's entered 4 runners. He's got the top 2 choices on the morning line, Silver Prospector and Shoplifted. Before we get into the main contenders, though, let's begin with the TimeformUS pace projector to see how the speeds and closers in this race are likely to get, what kind of dynamics are likely to get. And you see this race is predicted to feature a fast pace. The number 4 Nucky is shown on the lead ahead of the number 6 Gold Street. Both of these horses are coming out of sprint races. The number 6 Gold Street has actually never raced in a route, so he'll be stretching out for the first time. And the number 1 Lycan is a long shot in this race, who is also trying a route for the first time. So with so many sprinters stretching out, I think that there is a high likelihood that we do see a fast pace in this race, and that could set it up for some of the closers, like the number 7 Shoplifted or the number 9 3 Technique, who also likes to come from off the pace. Now let's begin by looking at some of the major contenders, and we'll start with the morning line favorite, one of the Steve Asmussen runners. That is the number 2 Silver Prospector, and let's take a look at his maiden victory at Keeneland. This is actually 3 starts back for this horse. It's his first race ever on dirt, because they began his career by starting him 3 times on the turf. He ran fine in those races, but it turns out, despite the fact that he's a son of the versatile Declaration of War, he really does prefer one surface, and that is the dirt. He earned a 1:11 TimeformUS speed figure for this race, beating what seemed like a pretty strong field going the 6.5 furlongs at Keeneland. My one reservation about that number, which is the highest in this field, is that horses haven't really come back out of that race to validate the figure. The second place finisher, Telephone Talker, has come back to disappoint in 2 starts. One of those was on the turf, but he did come back on the dirt last time and run a lower speed figure. So we'll see if that 1:11 really does hold up. But Silver Prospector came back out of that maiden victory, stretched out in subsequent starts against Stakes Company. He beat a pretty good field last time at the Kentucky Jockey Club. That race did come over a sloppy track, but we saw some horses coming out of that race run well in the Lecomte last weekend, most notably the 4th place finisher Enforceable, who was the Lecomte winner. And Silver Prospector was game to beat that field last time in that Kentucky Jockey Club. He showed that he could get the distance. Turning back to a mile today should not be a problem for him. He's got a versatile running style, so I'm not too worried about that pace projector. In my opinion, he's just the strongest of the Asmussen horses, and he is the horse to beat. Steve Asmussen's other horse that I think is going to take a lot of money in this race is the number 7 Shoplifted. And let's take a look at his race last time out in the Springboard Mile. He got the victory this day after a pretty wide trip around both turns, but I don't think that was really detrimental to his performance, because if you watch a lot of races on that Remington Park card from Springboard Mile night, you didn't really want to be on the rail. So I don't think it hurt at all that Shoplifted was about 3 to 4 wide around both turns in this race. He was game to get the victory. I would say that the runner-up in this race, Answer In, who was inside for the entire stretch run, was probably best because he had a slightly more difficult trip that day. Shoplifted did show a lot of promise when he made his debut at Saratoga back at the beginning of last summer. They tried 3 Grade 1 stakes with him after that, and he was just slightly overmatched in all of those races. The class relief he got last time out in the Springboard Mile helped. He earned a competitive 1:04 TimeformUS speed figure that day, got the mile distance around 2 turns, so I suppose he's a contender in this race. I just think this is a slightly tougher spot, and ultimately, in the grand scheme of things on the Derby Trail, I'm not sure how far this horse ultimately wants to go, and I think he might ultimately be best going sprint distances. He could be competitive in this race. I just prefer others at slightly better prices. Let's take a look at another horse that might take some money in this race that's shipping in from New York, and that's the number 9 3 Technique. This is a horse that created a lot of buzz at Saratoga over the summer when he won his maiden win impressively. But let's take a look at his allowance victory last time out at Aqueduct. Not beating a very strong field here. He was bet down to 1 to 9 odds for a reason, because he was the just vastly superior to these horses in terms of speed figures coming into the race, and he wins this race as easily as he's supposed to. Irad Ortiz, who's on him this day, just shakes the whip at him. He gets away from these horses late. He gears him down at the end. Now, the speed figure for this race in the final time is pretty slow compared to the rest of this field. You got a 73 Beyer, a 92 TimeformUS speed figure. Those kinds of numbers are just not going to get it done against a stakes quality field like this. Though 3 Technique did show that he was capable of running faster at Saratoga last summer when he was so impressive winning that maiden race. It's back August 31st. He got a 1:01 TimeformUS speed figure that day. So he's capable of running faster, though his trainer Jeremiah Engelhardt doesn't have the best numbers stretching out in distance. This is a bit bit of a tall order for this horse who's trying by far the best field of his career. I think he's got ability. I just want to see him get some two-turn experience before I'm going to bet him in this race at what should be a middling price around 9-2 or 5-1. Let's take a look at some bigger prices in this race. And if you watched my preview of the Lecomte last weekend, I think it's no surprise that the horse that I'm picking in this Smarty Jones is the number 8 Linz Map. I liked him quite a bit in the Lecomte last weekend, despite the fact that he drew post 14. Mark Casse elected to scratch him that day and instead target this smaller field in the Smarty Jones. And Linz Map, I just like all of his races. He ran well sprinting first time out of Churchill Downs. I thought he really stepped forward nicely when he tried the mile 2 back at Churchill Downs. He was just in the teeth of an honest pace the entire way. Shared Sense was also in this race, came to him at the end of that race, and Linz Map really battled back gamely to hold sway and hang on by half a length that day. They tried 2 turns for the first time at the fairgrounds last time, and you see that his speed figure regressed a little bit to a 96. I'm not too concerned about that because let's take a look at the TimeformUS chart for that race to see how the other horses in that race did coming out of this allowance race. And Linz Map beat Mr. Monomoy, who came back last weekend and was a very close third in the Lecomte Stakes. And you see he improved his TimeformUS speed figure from earning a 95 in that allowance to get a 106 in the Lecomte. Accession also came back in the Lecomte and improved his TimeformUS speed figure. And Race Driver, who was 4th in this race, came back in an allowance race on the Fairgrounds undercard last Saturday and also improved his TimeformUS speed figure by 10 points. So given the fact that the pace of this allowance race that Linz Map won was so slow, I think the speed figure could have been higher. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for overcoming that slow pace to run down Mr. Monomoy last time. And given how well that rival ran in the stakes last weekend, I think Linz Map just makes a lot of sense in this race. And just to kind of hammer home the fact that I wouldn't be too concerned about that lower speed figure when he tried 2 turns last time, I want to take a look briefly at the sibling summary of his pedigree in DRF Formulator. And if you haven't checked out the new DRF Formulator yet, I highly recommend you look at it because there are a lot of new features that I'm pretty excited about. And one of them is this sibling summary. And you can see how all of the daughters of this horse's dam, Puxasako, did. Out of 127 starters, she's had 31 winners. And when you break it down, she's had 16 winners in dirt routes, a couple winners on turf and synthetic and route races. So all in all, of her 31 winners among all of this horse's siblings, 19 of those have been earned in route races. So I think there's definite evidence that Linz Map is not going to have any trouble stretching out further in distance. Like his running style, just think he makes a lot of sense in this race and hoping to get 5 or 6 to 1 on him. He's my top pick, but I do want to look for some value underneath. And one horse that I would want to throw into the exotics as well is the number 3 Shared Sense. He is just a maiden coming into this race, but I think it's pretty noteworthy that Brad Cox is taking a shot with this horse instead of running him in a maiden race because, as I mentioned, he only lost to Linz Map by a half a length 2 back at Churchill Downs. And, well, he didn't get that close to the winner last time when he lost all over that sloppy track at Churchill Downs on the Kentucky Jockey Club undercard. The winner of that last race, Blackberry Wine, is a pretty nice horse for Joe Sharp. And he came back and won an allowance race last weekend at the fairgrounds with a 109 TimeformUS speed figure. Looks like a real promising sort that's going to try Stakes Company next time. If the fast pace that's predicted develops in this race, I think Shared Sense has a running style that could have him closing at the end. So he could work out the right trip, and I think he could pick up pieces. I don't think he's really a win candidate, but I want to use him in exactas and trifectas underneath my top pick, Linz Map. So going with Linz Map and the Smarty Jones, hoping to get somewhere around that 5-1, 6-1 range, and I think we just might do that.